and we're going down in the dollar, and we're going up in gold. In the meantime, people should be buying gold. They should be buying silver. I think we go up regardless of what happens. And I know a lot of people are still worried about buying gold and silver, right? There are people that are still waiting for a pullback. Oh, I don't want to buy $3,300 gold. I don't want to buy $36 silver. Well, if you don't want to buy $3,300 gold, be prepared to buy $3,600 gold or $4,000 gold, right? Because it's more likely to go up than down. I think we're near the bottom in both gold and silver. So don't press your luck. Don't hope for a big drop so you could buy more. Just buy more right now. And if you don't own any gold and silver, well, you better make sure and buy some right now.
The dollar is weakening while gold is rising, and that trend is likely to continue. People should consider buying gold and silver now rather than waiting for a dip that may never materialize. Prices are more likely to go higher. So if you're hesitating at $3,300 gold or $36 silver, you might end up paying even more later. Historically, gold and the dollar have tended to move in opposite directions. When the dollar weakens, gold prices tend to climb. And that's playing out strongly now. Global de-dollarization trends are accelerating. Central banks, especially in BRICS and Asia, are buying gold aggressively, boosting it as a new monetary anchor as dollar dependency wanes. Peter Schiff, a well-known American economist, financial commentator, and investment broker, criticizes Trump's trade policies, especially his use of tariffs. Initially, Trump claimed that tariffs were a tool to encourage other countries to adopt zero tariffs in favor of free trade. But when Vietnam lowered its tariffs on U.S. goods to nearly zero, Trump responded by raising U.S. tariffs on Vietnamese imports to 20 to 40%. Contradicting his earlier claims, Trump took to social media in May and accused the European Union, EU, of stalling talks. After a phone call with Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, Trump reneged and agreed to return to the July 9th deadline. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Trump said he expects to have most countries done by July 9th, explaining that progress will be made by either a letter or a deal. He sent letters to Japan and South Korea announcing 25% tariffs on their exports, despite their very low existing tariffs on U.S. goods. The main point is that U.S. consumers, not foreign governments, are the ones paying for these tariffs, and Trump is misrepresenting who benefits from them. As we dive into the video, remember to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update.
I think one of the most significant things that's been happening are the trade deals, right? The supposed trade deals that Donald Trump has been negotiating. Because as you remember, there was a 90-day pause after the reciprocal tariffs resulted in a crash in the stock and bond market of the dollar, a crash that stocks recovered from, bonds mostly recovered, and the dollar didn't recover at all. In fact, the dollar made new lows. But the reason that we got the recovery is because we got the pause. Trump called the tariffs off. He earned the nickname of Taco. Trump always chickens out. And I think that the markets are expecting another helping of Taco because Trump has been announcing some very bad deals. The Nasdaq still finished at a new high today, right? The markets are still rising despite the fact that we're now learning that the Liberation Day tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, are coming back. I mean, they may not be quite as high as they were originally proposed, but they're almost there. And in some cases, they're higher. But they're much higher what investors expected when they bought that dip. Now, the first sign of this happened last week. And I actually did a Twitter Spaces or X Spaces and discussed it, on Friday. But I talked about the Vietnam deal because that really shows where Trump is going. And it really exposes a lot of the BS that a lot of people were talking about when Trump first announced these tariffs. Because remember, there are a lot of free traders that normally wouldn't like tariffs. And so they had to justify Trump was doing. One I recall was, Larry Kudlow. I was listening to him on his show on Fox Business. But he was saying, look, Trump's a free trader. Trump wants free trade. He's just going to leverage these tariffs. He's coming up with a high tariff, hoping that other countries will drop their tariffs to zero, and then we'll reciprocate and do the same thing, right? They tariff us zero, we tariff them zero, because supposedly these high tariffs were there to reciprocate the high tariffs that other countries had on us. Except they didn't have high tariffs on us. They were all make-believe. People thought, well, if other countries go to zero, well, maybe we'll go to zero. Well, that's exactly what Vietnam did. Vietnam dropped their tariffs on U.S. imports basically to zero. Now, they weren't very high before. I think they were still less than 10%. I mean, so they were there. 9-10% isn't nothing, but it's certainly not, a big wall of protectionism that's going to keep our products out of their market. But there were some tariffs. Well, Vietnam said, okay, Trump, we'll go down to zero. Now, what did Donald Trump do? Did Donald Trump say, great, that's exactly what I wanted. Now we're going to go to zero too, and we're going to have free trade? No, that's not what Trump did. Trump raised tariffs on Vietnam to 20%, hardly zero. And that's higher, much higher than the tariffs were Vietnamese imports before Liberation Day. And if it turns out that goods came through Vietnam via China, so China sends goods to Vietnam and then Vietnam re-exports them to us, that's going to be a 40% tariff. Now, I'm not really sure how we, prove that what we're getting from Vietnam originated in China. So maybe there'll be some cheating to get the lower tariff. We're going to be paying 20 to 40% tariffs. That's not zero. That's not free. That Trump's real goal was a level playing field of zero tariffs is complete BS. And in fact, more proof of that was just announced earlier today. Donald Trump announced that we're going to have 50% tariffs on Brazilian imports. We don't even have a trade deficit with Brazil. I didn't even realize that, but we have a small surplus with Brazil. But now we want to make Americans pay a 50% tariff to buy Brazilian products. And Trump said that we're going to do this for political reasons. So because Trump has some kind of political beef with Brazil, he's going to make Americans pay 50% more to buy Brazilian products? I mean, why is he taking out his frustration on the Brazilians? But again, this is part of his misunderstanding of who pays his tariffs. I mean, we're not able to push off our costs on the rest of the world, right? That's just not the way tariffs work. Now, in addition to the deal he made with Vietnam, later than that, he made a deal with Japan and Korea, or he didn't make a deal, more than anything else. They're not there to close down their markets to our products. Yet we're going to slap these countries with these 25% tariffs. Now, of course, Trump always likes to pretend that, well, there's these non-tariff barriers. No, there's not. They don't really exist. They're in his imagination.
Peter Schiff points out that on July 4th, Trump signed a huge budget bill known as the Big Beautiful Bill, which in reality increases rather than decreases budget deficits. Despite being promoted as significant tax relief, it raises the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. It includes provisions such as higher SALT deductions and no income tax on tips, up to a cap. Critics contend that this bill exacerbates long-term deficits, raises government expenditure, and drives up inflation. Republicans have a history of accusing Democrats of extravagant spending, yet the majority of them backed this law, indicating that there isn't much of a difference between the two parties when it comes to fiscal discipline. Eventually, inflation and rising living expenses will be used to fund this growth. People will have to deal with increased prices resulting from tariffs and inflation, even though they may experience a slight increase in their wages due to lower income taxes. The benefits of any tax cuts will be negated by the inflation tax, which is a result of economic mismanagement and excessive money printing. The United States needs genuine fiscal reform, not more government expansion masquerading as economic assistance, according to critics of the plan, who claim it is a covert tax increase disguised as a victory. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Another thing that happened between my last podcast and this one was the big, beautiful bill, better known as the budget busting bill, or, the big ugly bill, or wherever you want to. But that got passed. They managed to get it past the House and the Senate, strict party lines. In fact, in the Senate, J.D. Vance had to cast the tie-breaking vote. It squeaked through the House, and Donald Trump signed it in a ceremony on the 4th of July, right? As if this is great news, right? I'm going to sign this great bill on Independence Day because somehow I'm making Americans more independent by consigning them to a future of debt and inflation, because that's what this bill does, right? It's as aptly named as the Inflation Reduction Act. There's nothing beautiful about this bill. The only thing honest is the fact that it's big, right? It was over 900. A Democratic president and a Democratic Congress. I bet if you didn't change a word of the bill, if it was exactly the same, you'd pretty much have all the Republicans being against it. They'd be saying, this is a disaster, this makes the deficits bigger, this is reckless and irresponsible, right? And the Democrats would be loving it, right? They'd be talking about it, how it was a great bill, right? It preserves all the big government programs, preserves Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare. They would like the bill if they proposed it. So it shows you there's really not much difference. You got Elon Musk now, who again is very frustrated, and rightly so, by the fact that Doge is gone and it's not going to do anything. It was all part of the Trump show. I talked about that before. And he wants to start a new party, the America Party, for the frustrated middle. There's no room in the middle. The Republicans and the Democrats are so close together, you can't get in between them. So we don't need a third party to thread that tiny needle to get in the middle of two basically socialist parties that want big government and just fight, over the edges, right? The extremes. Oh, where do you, I want to have a little bit difference here or a little bit there. We need a party that's way to the right of the Democrats and the Republicans, assuming that way to the right means less government when it comes to the social issues, less government when it comes to the economic issues, and fiscal responsibility. Because this big, beautiful budget busting bill, which Trump and the Republicans are touting as the biggest tax cut in U.S. history, is actually the biggest tax hike in U.S. history, because it grows the deficit more than any other bill in history. In fact, they raised the debt ceiling by $5 trillion just to get us through the next 2 years, right? If this really was a good bill that was going to reduce the deficit, why'd they have to raise the debt ceiling by $5 trillion? It's because they know that it's going to increase the deficit. And you know what? I think it's going to increase it more than they think. I don't even believe we're going to make it to 2 years. We may not even make it to the midterm elections before we bump up against that ceiling. And we already raised the debt by $5 trillion, which would mean it goes from $37 trillion to $42 trillion, right? That's where it'll be when we hit the ceiling again. But the fact that they raised it that high, this is the biggest increase in the debt ceiling we've ever had, and it passed without a single Democratic vote. So who's the party for big government when almost every Republican in the House and Senate voted to raise the debt ceiling by $5 trillion over the objection of every Democrat, right? So this is not a good look for the Republicans. It's certainly not good for the country. And so, yes, Elon Musk is frustrated, but, we don't need a party in the middle, right? We need a party that actually is going to level with the public and not pretend that a tax hike is a tax cut. And the reason that I consider it a tax hike is because government spending goes way up. And the cost of government is what it spends, not what it collects in taxes. Because every dime the government spends has to be paid for. So if the government spending goes up, government costs more money. Where does government get the money? From the public. So if the government costs more, the public has to pay more. So how are we going to pay? Well, if they're cutting our income taxes, how are we going to pay? Well, one way is tariffs, right? We're getting these tariffs. So we'll earn more money. But when we spend that money, we're going to have to pay higher prices because of the tariffs. But the bigger way we're going to pay is inflation, because not only are prices going to go up because of tariffs, and that's just, the imports really, all the prices go up because of inflation, because the tariffs are going to help weaken an already weak economy. Interest rates are going up. Donald Trump wants a new Fed chairman to cut interest rates. Okay, when they cut interest rates, long-term rates can just as easily go up. In fact, they will go up. And that means mortgage rates go up and all sorts of debt costs go up. But we're going to have a recession. We're going to have more money printing, more inflation, and that is going to, be a tax hike, right? Because we're going to pay for this excessive deficit spending through higher prices, a higher cost of living. It's the inflation tax. And one of the reasons that Trump got elected is he promised to lower the inflation tax. Well, instead of lowering the inflation tax, he is raising the inflation tax.
Growing worries about inflation, fiscal mismanagement, and global de-dollarization are reflected in rising gold prices and a declining dollar. The argument for buying precious metals gets stronger as central banks shift to gold and Trump's policies raise deficits and consumer expenses through tariffs and inflation. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill, according to critics like Peter Schiff, is more political theater than economic change, providing short-term tax relief while subtly burdening the people with long-term financial repercussions. Will gold eventually be revalued as part of a new global monetary system as a result of central banks' increasing desire for the metal? In the upcoming 12 to 24 months, how may middle and lower-income Americans be affected by ongoing inflation and tariff-driven price increases? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. To receive our latest updates, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful.